Have you ever woken up in a cold sweat, half remembering a dream you absolutely couldn't explain? Maybe there was an inexplicable landscape full of strange architecture covered in unrecognizable surfaces. Or perhaps there was a monster, a gigantic beast in silhouette, only explainable in segments. If these are familiar experiences, you might have been visited by the depths dweller himself, Cthulhu. Worry not, you won't suffer long. If he's reaching out like that, the end times are nigh anyway. Or maybe it was just a nightmare brought on by bad takeout. Who's to say? Let's rule that out for a moment and consider what the world might be like if the dreamer did indeed exist. Hello fellow friends and philosophers, and welcome back to the most mind-bending channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your voice in the void, Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to be considering the following question: what if Cthulhu existed today? Before we begin, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more tentacled terror. Outstanding! Let's get started. Now, Cthulhu is one of the better known figures from H.P. Lovecraft's collective works. In fact, he might be more popular than his creator at this point. While those interested in cosmic horror likely know H.P. quite well at this point, the general media-consuming public likely recognizes the name Cthulhu. Most folks are aware that he's a tentacle-covered giant demigod of sorts, which is mostly right, I suppose. Now, there are plenty of Cthulhu explainer videos out there these days, so I'll trust you to do some digging if you need additional context. For the purposes of this video, I'll trust that most people sort of know about cosmic horror, and even if you don't, I'll drop assorted facts throughout to make sure we're all generally on the same page. So let's ask the big question: what if Cthulhu existed today? It's not too far-fetched to say he likely does. See, Cthulhu was once above the water, roaming the world like any great old one might. However, these days he seems to be slumbering eternal beneath the Pacific, dreaming in his underwater city of Relia. For argument's sake, we can claim that there isn't a 0% chance that Cthulhu is dwelling in the depths, never to be found by the average human. If we take that at face value, we can say with some degree of confidence that if Cthulhu existed today, not much would change. The world would still turn, people would still live their lives, dogs would still chase squirrels, the works. However, that is the simplest possible answer. It's easy to say that if Cthulhu existed, he would just continue sleeping. But there's a lot more to consider when a great old one exists. See, Cthulhu inspired many devoted followers. So devoted, you might even call them cultists. And these cultists formed groups and congregations and sewing circles, and these folks organized together and formed bigger cults. Cults devoted to worshipping Cthulhu and attempting to bring him out of his eternal slumber. As a great old one, Cthulhu once knew all that was occurring in the universe. He understood things that humans could never hope to understand. The basis of cosmic horror indeed. However, Cthulhu was willing to share some of this knowledge for a price. Before being relegated to the underwater city, he would communicate with chosen people through dreams. Through doing so, he established his cult. Word spread and cells popped up all over the world. It became so prevalent that even when he was trapped under the sea, his worshippers continued to worship. You see, the ocean is deep and vast, which makes it hard for even a godlike creature such as Cthulhu to transmit his messages. The telepathic communication has been weakened, meaning that only rarely does a message make it to the surface. That doesn't slow the cult down one bit, though. The cells of worshippers continue to congregate around the world, best known for their practice of chanting. Over and over again, they will say the ancient and unknowable words: "In his house at Relia, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming." This can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, but most of the time people assume that it means he's waiting for his followers to wake him up. It's been said, that is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange aeons even death may die. So Cthulhu isn't dead, at least not in any way that matters. And death apparently isn't the end, which allows for a lovely Cthulhu awakening to be in the cards. This quasi-immortality might actually be a draw for many of his worshippers too. If Cthulhu can live forever, why wouldn't he be able to grant that to his followers, right? That might actually be the case if you look at some different accounts of his followers. Human leaders of his cult appear to be immortal in some cases, drawing on dark and arcane powers to extend their life far beyond the span of a regular person. In doing so, they also inspire others to follow Cthulhu with promises of similar power being granted somewhere down the line. Eternal life tends to get a lot of people interested in worship, huh? And it's not just humans that benefit from this either. If you take a trip to the Murky Depths just outside of Innsmouth, you'll find all sorts of deep ones. These freakish aquatic humanoids also worship Cthulhu, and the biggest and baddest of them seem to live and grow forever. Even after reaching maturity, their size increases. They also tend to come ashore and mate with humans, creating strange halflings equally devoted to the terrifying dreamer. To summarize what we've discussed so far, if Cthulhu existed today, we'd have a lot more cultists and a lot more immortality, and probably some crazy gigantic aquatic beasts. That's pretty fun, right? Of course, these results only happen if he remains asleep at the bottom of the ocean. If he were to awaken, it would be a whole other story. There are a few different ways this could happen too. I think that one that a bunch of people might be familiar with involves a spiteful fat kid and some superhero cosplay.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are pleased to announce the successful merger of Cthulhu and the King. Cthulhu's track record for complete dominance and interdimensionary rule is without question.
Definitely not canon or anything close to it, but there was a story arc in a season of South Park where an oil drilling company releases Cthulhu for a period of time. Cartman then decides that he can manipulate the Great Old One, as he does with all the other people in his life, and begins waging war on the things he believes are evil. Then Mintberry Crunch comes in and sends Cthulhu back to where he came from. Again, definitely not how it would really play out, but it's an interesting take on how Cthulhu might enter our realm. And it actually does sort of stick to the story from the Call of Cthulhu. In H.P. Lovecraft's tale concerning the Cults Creeps, a ship full of sailors actually manages to open a portal to the underwater city, so not too far off in terms of the whole summoning bit. And of course, the summoning is just the beginning. Once Cthulhu enters our world, it's all over. Without deep sleep and deeper waters keeping his legendary telepathic powers at bay, Cthulhu would be more powerful than we could ever understand. He'd subjugate Earth in a matter of moments, with members of his cult being rewarded for their loyalty, and heathens being enslaved or killed instantly. It would all be too much for our tiny human brains. Classic cosmic horror, right? The introduction of Cthulhu into our world also implies a whole lot of other cosmic beings as well. Cthulhu is the figurehead in what is known as the Cthulhu Mythos, a series of tales by assorted authors about cosmic entities in the same universe as the Great Slumberer. Without getting too deep into it, we'd also likely be introduced to his progeny, Gathanatoa, Yathagtha, Zothamog, and Cthulhu, his mates, Idhya and Kasagtha, his siblings, Hastur, Cathanid, and Nraku, and his ancestors, Yog-Sothoth and Shub-Niggurath. All of these beings come with their own set of troubles. Yog-Sothoth might father another half-cosmic, half-human child, like in the Dunwich Horror. Gathanathoa might freeze some folks like Medusa, but leave their minds to rot in an immobile shell for all of eternity. Maybe Hastur would leave the yellow sign all over for hapless folks to stumble upon and become indoctrinated by. So many opportunities in this mythos, so little hope for humanity. The world would be a much darker, much more mysterious place if Cthulhu existed today. I'm sure plenty of investigative journalists and scholars would try to infiltrate the cults and find more info too. Of course, this would come with its own slew of horrors and misfortunes. How's a writer supposed to explain their encounter with an indescribable being? Maybe we'd get some video footage of true horror. Although who's to say you can even capture any of it on video? And that just about brings us to our conclusion. If Cthulhu existed today, we'd see an uptick in cult activity, maybe even immortality. If he were to awaken, we'd all be screwed, no question about it. There's also a lot of room for other beings from the Cthulhu mythos to appear. All in all, we'd be terrified a whole lot more often. What do you think? Would you join in on the chanting, or would you just run away? Would a Cthulhu-filled world be better or worse than what we have now? Maybe an outside force is just what we need to feel alive again. What's your favorite Lovecraftian horror from the Cthulhu mythos? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more aquatic ones from the top 10 scary insect bites. Connor Purdy says, I've played with a tarantula hawk when I was a stupid 5-year-old living in Arizona. To this day, it was the worst insect bite / sting I've ever had to deal with. My goodness, and at the tender age of 5 no less. I mean, from that point on, I'm sure you were a pretty tough kid. Matthew Thomas says, little buggers, aren't they? They are literally insects. I mean, what do you want me to say? Little annoyances? Big buggers, perhaps? Justin Terrapin says, red wasp stings are horrible. When I was 6, I got stung on the hand after one of these wasps fell into my bed. It felt like I had stuck my hand in gasoline and lit it. Jeez, all these folks are getting stung real young. My question is, how did it find its way to your bed? Fiona says, my friends have bugs as a pet. That's always interesting, eh? I don't think bugs show the same unconditional love as a dog or a cat, though. Maybe a fish. Filio Watras says, dig dig. It's an old meme, but it checks out. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I attempt transcendental meditation, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more cosmic horror. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.